Hello everybody, welcome to the Python course. In the previous part, we have done module 7, that is functional programming. In this part, we will cover module 8, that is OOPS programming. In this lecture, we will see what are Python classes and objects, what are class methods and class variables, static methods and instant variables, and our init method. In the later part of this section, we will cover the main method, Python inheritance, lambda function, and filter and reduce, right? So let's get started. So I have already opened up my Anaconda navigator and also opened the directory structure of Trunic. So here I will open a new notebook, that is module 8 OOPS programming. So we'll name at module 8 OOPS underscore classes. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so what is a class? So class is a special data type which defines how to build a certain kind of object, right? So basically in this class, so we are trying to build a blueprint, right? And this blueprint could be used as a different object. So we could create a object out of this blueprint and we could use in whatever way we want, right? So whatever the variables we write in this class, or we define some functions in this class, that could be accessible to all the objects which we instantiate, right? So using the class keyword which is used to define a class. So here, in order to define a class, we use the class keyword followed by the class name and followed by the parenthesis, and inside the after the colon, whatever we write, that becomes a blueprint or a data type, a special type of data type which we could use, right? So let us try to create a person class. So right, so person is a normal class, and from this person we have created two objects. We have created the Karan and Arjun, right? So if we try to print Karan and Arjun, so it says that this is from the person class and is a object of this person class which is residing at this particular memory location. Note that these two are different objects. They are not same objects, they are different objects residing at different memory locations, right? Let us try to practice this. So we define a class by using the class keyword, and we have a person, right? So this is an empty class, right? So we have defined our class. Now we try to take a variable, that is Karan, which is an object of this person class, right? And if I try to print Karan, it says the person, this object is of person class and it is residing at this particular memory location. Similarly, if I try to take another person, say Amit, right, and try to print Amit too, so it is being residing at a different memory location, right? So this is how we define a class, and this is the object, right, which we are trying to create from this person class, right? Okay. So next we'll talk about the instance variable. So in the previous slide we have understood that this is the person class and we have created an instance of this person class. So instance or object, you can, is one of the same thing, right? Now this instance or this object could have certain variables, like Karan could have a salary. Karan is an employee of some company. Karan has some address, right? Similarly, Arjun could have an address, Arjun could have a designation. So basically, these are the variables of this instance which we have created from this person class, right? So these are some kind of variables which Arjun hold, and these are the kind of variables which Karan hold, right? If we try to print Karan dot salary, Karan dot employee ID, Arjun dot designation, so this will result me in the variables which have assigned. So let us try to do this. Right now we have in created two instances of this person class, that is Karan and Amit here. So let us try to put some variables of Amit and Karan respectively. So let's suppose Amit has a salary of rupees 20,000 and Karan has a salary of 40,000, right? So Amit having a company equal to Google, right? And Karan equal to Microsoft, right? So when I try to print Amit dot salary, so it will give me 20,000. And if I try to print the salary of Karan, it will give me 40,000, right? Similarly, if I try to print Amit dot company, it will give me Google and Amit dot company, right? So this I have done a spelling mistake, right? Okay. So if I say print Karan dot company, right? So these are the variables which this instance is holding. So these are known as instance variables, right? So these are the variables of this instance. These are not the variables of the class or anything else. So these are the variables which these two people can hold. So they are different, right? So Amit could have a different salary and Amit could work in a different company as compared to Karan, right? Okay. So now we'll talk about the class variables. So we have talked about the instance variables. Now we'll talk about the class variable. For example, so we have a person class, and in this person class I define a company, right? Now this company would be shared between these two instances, right? Karan dot salary, this is the instance variable. Karan dot employee ID, this is the instance variable. Karan dot address, this is the instance variable, because this all these variables are referred to Karan only. Arjun dot address, Arjun dot designation, this we have already seen, right? So this is perfectly fine with us because previously we have worked on this instance variables. Now this company has come, right? So now if I try to write person dot company, so this is the class variable, because we are trying to access the variable from the person class, right? So if I try to print person dot company, that would be give me the Google, right? Right. So here if I try to write Karan dot company, so that another instance variable would get created, right? So let us try to understand this. So here in this part, so I create a class. So let's take this class only, so which we have created earlier. So here in this part I am trying to create a company equal to, let's say, Amazon, right? Okay. So now if I try to print person dot company, it will give me Amazon, right? Because this is your this is your uh, variable which is present inside your class. So that is the class variable. Now I will again try to create a variable name instance sorry, the object person object Karan from this person class, right? Now if I try to access Karan dot company, let's see what will happen. Now Karan doesn't have the company, right? So now, because the company was created in the person class itself, so it is a class variable which is being shared among all the instances. So if I try to write Karan dot company, it will give me Amazon, right? Similarly, if I create Amit equal to person, and if I write Amit dot company, so this will also give me Amazon, because both these instances are derived from this class or created from this class, and this class consists of a class variable named company. So this will result in giving me the result of Amazon, right? Okay. So now if we wanted to see what are the variables Karan is holding or Arjun is holding, that we could see it by using dot underscore dict. So let us try to see this. So if I try to see Amit dot underscore dict, so it is so Amit is okay. So Amit itself does not hold any variables, right? So if I say Amit dot uh, employee ID equal to 20, now if I run this part, so you can say that these are the variables which are instance variables. So employee ID is the instance variable, right? So class variables would not come in this part. If I wanted to say what kind of class variables are there, then I would say person dot dict. Now here you can see that company equal to Amazon, right? So the only difference between your instance variable and the class variable is that instance variable is only specific to your instance, and the class variable is shared between all your instances. Sorry, right? Okay. So now we'll talk about the instance methods, right? Suppose I create a class. In this their class, there is a one class variable, and also there is a function which is being defined, and that has got self, right? Now we'll talk about what is self. Self refers to the current object. If we try to create an object out of this person class, now this self consists of Arjun, right? Now we are talking about the Arjun. If we try to create the object of the of if we try to create the object Arjun, right? So now self will be referred to as Arjun. If we try to create Karan, so self would be referred as Karan, right? We are talking about the Karan, and after if we create Arjun, then we are talking about Arjun. So that is what is self. So it points to the current object, right? So now here in this part, so we'll say class equal to person and company equal to Google, and we define print description, or we have a self and self dot designation and self dot address, right? In this part, we create the instance variables, that's current dot designation is software engineer and current dot address is Delhi, right? And if we try to call this function, so when we call Arjun, so all the variables which we have created under the Arjun object, that would give us the self dot designation or self dot address. And if we try to create the variables under current, so it will give the variables which has been referred under the current, that the instance variables of this current object, and in Arjun we will get the instance variables of the Arjun, right? So let's see so how it works. Okay, so in this part only I'll try to modify. So print details, so I would say, and I will create a self, right? So print self dot designation, print self dot employee ID, right? This is my class, right? Now I'll create current, data object, right? Right, now this has been created. So if I try to see, so now these are the instance variables which has been created for the object current, right? So we have created employee ID and designation, right? Now if I wanted to say print details, right? So now it has printed software engineer and 23, right? So what we have written in my person class, that is, if we try to call this print details, it will print self dot designation and self dot employee ID, right? Similarly, if I change this to Amit and I will change it to employee ID something else, so that's way also it will work. So I'll copy this and we'll try to, let's say it's current one, right? And then right, and if I say current one dot print details, so it will print me details of the current one. So this means we are referring to different objects and their instance variables are also different, right? So this is known as instance method, right? Because this method works for your instance. This is not a class method, this is your instance method, right? Right, because it is working for your specific object. So in the current you would have details of current, in Arjun we will have details of your Arjun, right? Okay. So now let's try to understand the init method. So init method is basically a constructor. It's a special method that initialize an individual object. Okay, so it runs automatically each time the object of the class has been created. As soon as we call this or write this statement current one equal to person, first of all the instance object would be created. Init object would be created, or the init method would be created, and it is being initialized, right? And the first parameter of the init should be a self, because self refers to the current object, right? Okay. Now what we'll do is we'll create an init method. Inside that init method we'll put a self and some variables, right? So we'll do the similar operation, but instead of that we are initializing here the variables. Instead of doing current dot designation or current dot address, we are directly initializing this inside your init class, right? So let's do this. So this is your class. So we'll define an init method. So the first argument in init method is self, right? And here we could also define your variables. So whatever variables we wanted to initialize, that we need to define in your parentheses, right? So it is self comma designation, then you have your employee ID, right? Then we say self dot designation equal to designation, or self dot employee ID equal to employee ID, right? Let us try to run this. So successfully created. So now I am creating a object of this person class named Karan. Instead of writing as Karan one dot employee ID, I would pass here as software engineer comma 23, right? So now the variables of the Karan, if we try to see dot underscore dict, now you can see that the instance variables got initialized, right? Because we have directly made a init function in which itself it initialize the variables of your instance, right? So now I could directly call the print details and get the details, right? Similarly, if you write Amit equal to person, and inside Amit you write some details, manager comma 78, right? Amit will also get be initialized, and if you print the details, then the details have been printed, right? Okay, so now this was the uh, instance method. Now we will look upon the class method, right? So what is a class method? So the class method consists of the variables of the class, right? So we need to define the CLS, right? This is the instance variable, and in the instance variable we have defined the self because it points to the current instance. But in the class method we will not define or pass the self keyword, we will pass the CLS because it has the class variables, right? So the class method are those methods which consist of the class variables, not the instance variables, right? So here if I wanted to change the class variables, I could change it by using the class method because they are easily accessible by the class method. For example, I wanted to change the company name from Google to Apple, and this company has been accessed by all the instances of this class, right? So that I could change it by specifying this change company, right? So first of all I will initially instantiate a variable instantiate an object from this class, initialize it with some kind of values, and if I wanted to change the company name, so that way I could do that part, right? So let us try to see how it works. First of all I will define a method which consists of a CLS, that is the it can access the class variables. Change company CLS, new name, right? CLS dot company equal to new name, right? Right. So this has been created. Now I will. So these are the so I will again initialize this. So Amit is also initialized, right? So now Amit dot, now we have change company. Here I will pass Apple, right? So Amit dot company will be Apple, right? Earlier it was Google, so now I have changed to earlier it was Amazon, now I have changed to Apple, right? So this is how your class method will work. Class method will only access the class variables, right? Okay. Then what are static methods? Static methods which are neither your instance methods or your class method. So that does not contain either CLS or self, right? So they are basically your simple method. For example, in your class, you don't want to deal with your class variables or your instance variables. You wanted to do your own computation and then come up with a solution, right? So you wanted to print something. So that way, so you can define a static method. So static method is a method which does not contain your class variable or your instance variable, right? Right. So we'll define a that print string, and we'll pass a string, and it will basically print that string out of that uh, instance, right? So we have instance, that is Arjun Karan, right? And it will print that statement. So let us define this print string. Okay, so this is giving us error because we have optionally uh, now change the class, so that's why it's giving us error, right? So now I try to again run this part, right? Okay, so we have Amit dot print string. Amit is good. So the print string takes one position arguments but two is given. So here if I try to run this again, print details, okay, Amit dot okay. So I forgot to define the static method, so that's why it was giving me the error, right? So basically we need to write at the rate notation if we are following a static method, right? So this is a static method. We need to tell the class that this is static method, right? So this is how your static method will work, right? So okay, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you guys.